So last week we covered the first 4 steps of my short-term rental design process, which was more about market research, design, and planning. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll link that down below. This week we're gonna finish the part 2, which has more to do with executing the design plans. Things like budgeting, knowing where to spend money, where to save, how to shop and where to shop, setting up, and stocking the house with supplies, and the final touches. I personally feel like the shopping process can be a little stressful because obviously it's still a business and you want a good return on your investment. So I think that adds a whole other level of stress to shopping for a short-term rental rather than your own house. The other thing is the planning and designing is all imagination, all creative process, and it's fun to come up with a vision. But now to make that vision a reality, you have to try to execute it within a certain budget and within a certain time frame. And it's a lot of moving pieces. So honestly, this is not my favorite part, but it's a very important part. And hopefully some of my tips and some of the mistakes I've made that I'll be sharing in this video can help make your shopping and setup experience a little smoother. Jumping right back into the same numbering system, we're on number 5, which is making a budget. Now this budget has to include the furniture pieces and also the decoratives, the smaller items, the supplies, and also any setup cost if you're hiring someone to help set up the furniture. And now ideally this budget you would have already come up with before you started investing in your short-term rental. But just kind of to give some context to how much something might cost, this tiny house came out to roughly $21 per square foot, and our beach house came out to $15 per square foot. This tiny house is a little bit more of a kind of premium experience, if you will. We went from higher end things, both for the experience, but also because we live here and we kind of splurged a little more than we absolutely needed to. The beach house is still really nice, but I think it's less over the top compared to some of the tiny house items that we have. And so I think that's a little bit more reflective of a house that has solid design, fairly nice amenities, but isn't like the top tier. So feel free to take that square footage number plus maybe a few percent for inflation and use it in your own calculation and budgeting. I'd actually be kind of curious to know what everyone else is spending on their projects. So if you don't mind sharing, I would love to know what your latest project costs, either on a per square foot basis or the total project, just so everyone else in the comment section can get an idea. And then within that budget of $15 per square foot or whatever, in my experience, 90% of it goes towards the furnishing / the setup cost of that furnishing, and then 10% or so is roughly the supplies. Moving on to number 6. Okay, quick question. I was told this is a Hong Kong thing. People don't do this as 6. This is 6. Now I'm like way too conscious about this. All right, well, 6 is the shopping. So where do we shop? It all depends on what you're really aiming for, the kind of furniture you're looking for, and the target demographic, which we covered in the last video. But we do a lot of West Elm in the tiny house. We take a lot of the modern / mid-century modern pieces from West Elm, and we also find a lot of like actually good pieces from IKEA. IKEA can be hit or miss, but for something really simple, really basic, they're a great place for that. Article is another really good one. We've used them for the beach house and also for our primary residence. They have a lot of very versatile pieces that I think can fit into many different design styles, and their delivery process is actually really good. Like you can actually pick an accurate delivery window and the person actually shows up during that time, which I can't say for a lot of these other furniture stores that are online. CB2 is another really good one for modern things. And Etsy is also fantastic if you're looking for some handmade pieces, something more unique that people won't find at every other short-term rental. We personally also really love Blue Dot. I know that's more like minimalistic, clean lines type of modern, and it's not for everyone. And some of the prices can be higher, but we love their unique design. And they're also from Minnesota, which, you know, counts for special bonus points in my heart. Serena and Lily is also a good place if you're looking for something more coastal, but like more elevated and less cheesy coastal. It's a little pricey, but I think they have some really good options for that. Otherwise, Costco is like a great place for just bulk stocking up on stuff. Amazon we use for anything that we can't find anywhere else. The benefit of Amazon obviously is the delivery, but I tend to find the Amazon quality is very hit or miss. And so it's not necessarily my first choice if I can find furniture pieces or decorative items from anywhere else. Lastly, Zara Home also has some interesting options. Their quality is also very hit or miss, much like their fashion pieces, but sometimes you can find some unique, like handmade looking things from their store. And their fragranced items range, like meaning the candles, the hand soaps and lotions, those also feel more luxurious and more spa-like than they really are. And I've had pretty good luck with those items. Now, those are just big stores. Obviously, if you have time and you can go to a thrift store, a local store, or Facebook Marketplace, you can probably find some good deals and also some unique items. That tends to be a little more time consuming though, so you'll have to weigh whether that is something you'd like to do. As you're browsing around, I would suggest tracking everything and pasting the link and adding the cost to your spreadsheet that you probably started from my previous steps. And that will help you figure out how much everything totals to. You'd be surprised, like $20 here, $30 there, everything really adds up. And so I would suggest tracking this whole list first and then making the commitment to purchase at the end. This also helps you consolidate items. So for example, if you have 5 items from West Elm, you can check out all at once and not be charged exorbitant shipping and handling, like 10,000 fees. I don't even know how it works. I like some of their stuff, but their fees are unreasonable. Some of these places also offer a flat rate delivery for furniture items. If you're eyeing a piece that's from one of these stores, you might as well just wait till the end to see what else you're buying. And hopefully maybe with Black Friday or the end of this year, you might get some deals from some of these stores, maybe. Anyway, my point is combining items will help you minimize unnecessary fees and consolidate the delivery window as well. One more comment for making this shopping list. As you're going through the amenities that people might like, such as an iron/ironing board, which I had a whole rant about in another video where I was considering whether to add that based on market data. What sort of amenities your guests are looking for is probably highly dependent on the market and also on your target demographic. So research this a little bit and that will help you narrow down what you actually need to buy. Like, how extensive of pots and pans do you need? Are you targeting a huge international travel demographic? Like, do you need a rice cooker? Do you need different kinds of cooking utensils? Or for us, our beach house mainly has folks driving in like from Georgia or for like somewhere else in Florida from like not far away. And based on the guest profile that we have, the cooking needs are a little different than if you were in a very international city and you're hoping to host folks from everywhere. And that's just one example of how amenities might be different. So again, long story short, do your market research and figure that out. And hopefully that will help you narrow down the list for shopping. Now, as far as specific items that I recommend, there are just so many that I could say here. So I will just give you the few highlights, the ones that I immediately think about when I think of what would I recommend someone get. The first one is this gray couch. Now, this is a couch that is in our primary residence, so this is kind of cheating, but I think this would be the perfect couch for a short-term rental. We got this from Article, and it has this light gray fabric. And at first glance, it looks kind of like, well, is this gonna get dirty real quick? It's kind of a lighter color. This kind of fabric, is it gonna rub well? And let me tell you, daily we have children jumping up and down on this thing and rubbing and like spilling milk and food. This couch is definitely abused, right? But it shows zero signs of damage. I don't even know how. Like, it's not even pilling, the legs aren't falling off. It's pretty sturdy, and it's, at least thus far, it seems indestructible. So I would highly recommend anyone who is looking for a couch for a short-term rental use. It comes in different sizes too, so I'm sure you can find something that fits. I'll try to find that and link it. For TVs, we splurged and got the frame TV in the tiny house, and we actually really like it. It's got this really sleek profile. You could set it up as a screensaver to have whatever image you'd like. Like, it's meant to almost look like a piece of art. I don't think it fully does, but it's still something interesting to look at. And the screen looks pretty nice when it's functioning as a TV as well. Another recommendation I have is this TV console. It's got this marble texture on top, and the front is wood, and the shelves inside hold quite a bit too. We actually have this in our kids' toy room slash TV room, and so it's gotten a lot of little hands on it, toys smacked on it. The users of this family have not been kind to this console table, but it's really held up. I was worried about this wood chipping or this marble on top having problems, but so far no dents. So I highly recommend anything that is hard to damage for short-term rentals because you just never know. Even if you don't welcome guests and pets, even grown-ups. Not all grown-ups are super careful. So I would hate to have a beautiful wood table with a wood top and then someone puts like a wet drink on it and leaves a terrible mark forever and ever, or a beautiful leather couch that has like weird stains. So something that's easy to clean and doesn't look worse off on day 100 versus day 1. Those are the kinds of things that I look for in a good piece of furniture for a short-term rental. And then I have a really weird recommendation for art. For art, you have all these frames that you need to get, and frames can add up. And I really like these IKEA frames, actually. They have this really thin frame, which I think looks more contemporary, more modern, less dated, if you will. The only downside is that these frames are so deep, like thick, not in the side of the frame, but thick as in like they're deep. And so the hook that it comes with is kind of pointless because like how long does your nail have to be to get to that hook, right? I actually like struggled for a while to figure it out, but what we do now is we get picture hanging wire and we loop it through and we like just twist it at the end, like those twisties at the grocery store. You twist it so that it makes a loop and then just hang that whole loop onto the wall on your nail, and that solves all my problems. This is now my go-to frame, this Riba frame for any art hanging situation. Lastly, for item recommendations, few just practical items. You probably want to look into a smart lock. We use one of the Yale locks. I can link it below. I forget the actual name of it, but we can set the door codes remotely. We can make it a temporary door code, and we can use the guest's last 4 digits of their phone number to make it easier for them and for us to keep track of. So that's been really handy. We use the minute monitor to just keep track of noise and humidity. It doesn't record anything, so just from a privacy standpoint, it's not a concern. And you do have to subscribe to, I think it's an annual subscription. So I mean, that is the downside, but in case of a noise dispute, in case of a party complaint, you just want to be able to say, hey, you really were super loud, and this is the number of decibels that I can see from my phone. You know, you just don't want to have to go back and forth and do a he said, she said with your guests. And then this one might be a really random thing, but these little trash cans that I got from Amazon that come with a way to fasten a small little plastic bag, those are perfect for the bathroom because does everyone else line their trash cans? Not everyone. But I find that a lot easier to clean, and I know my cleaners appreciate that part instead of having to, I don't even want to do it. Like, it just sounds so terrible. So anyway, highly recommend. They come in a bundle of 2 or 3, and we just like got a bunch of them, stocked it for the whole beach house. A+. Still on the topic of shopping, I have a few money saving tips. Number 1 is if you come across a magazine or some catalog that has a really nice picture, you can actually just clip that out and put it into a frame as a picture. I won't tell you which catalog. It's one of the places where you can order art. But they mail us a physical catalog, and I was like, well, these are like essentially full-size pages. I'm just gonna cut these out and put them in a frame. Why not? And so we did that. I actually don't even use all of this. I had a bunch here. I put them into frames and I was like, let's see which one looks good. And so now I have like all these options that are like, I love this one. This one is actually cropped a little. The full size is a square, but this is a great way to add some additional art. Obviously, you'll need to buy the bigger pieces, right? Like this is not going to be enough to fill up the whole house or the whole property. But for a couple spots on the wall, like maybe something in the bathroom, something that's like maybe less consequential, you end up needing so much art. This would help you save a little bit of money and still have unique, impactful art that doesn't look like it was picked up at a big box store for 20 bucks. And then Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, those I already mentioned. And then lastly, if at the end of making your whole shopping list, you realize you're over budget, then what do? This is how I would start cutting down. I would make sure I have a balance between having really good photos, but then having an experience that lives up to it. What do I mean? Now, obviously you need enough art, enough decorative things, nice furniture to stage your place for nice photos so that people book it in the first place, right? But then once people show up, and I mentioned this in my last video, it's the experience that really counts. So you can't necessarily like skimp on the mattress and skimp on all the towels and get the nasty fuzzy kind. You know what I'm talking about. That really bothers me actually. We went to this one Airbnb in Denver. You can tell it was an investment for the person, which is fine. Like I'm using an Airbnb as an investment. But you can tell it was completely not thoughtful. You come out of the shower, there's nowhere to hang a towel. The towels are all the like white kind that are fuzzy and rough, and like it leaves lint all over so that when you're like lotioning your body, little chunks of towel lint comes off. And like they had these dining chairs that look really cute and kind of mid-century modern, but were so poorly made. Like 2 out of the 8 chairs had wobbly legs and they were falling apart. That was not a good experience, and it was so expensive, right? And I think really it's not how much it is, it's not the one broken chair. It's the mismatch between what I expected based on their pictures, based on how beautiful the pictures were. That didn't match the actual experience. And so I would recommend balancing those two and make sure what you're portraying is attractive, of course, but it still matches what you're actually able to provide. So on the topic of that experience element, mattress, bedding, towels, those have like some level of minimum that you can't really skimp on. And then between other things, like a heavy item, like a weighty coaster, for example, that feels more luxurious versus like a very plastic feeling coaster, even though they might cost the same, right? And you might have to pick and choose where to spend money when it's all down to looks. One example is, for example, in this tiny house, we kept the basic IKEA bed, thinking really it's a bed frame. It just needs to not look wrong and not be a focal point, and we can draw attention to all these other things. Because if we were to upgrade a bed, it would be a few $100s more. And those few $100s we could spend on getting a cool plant and getting this interesting lamp and sprucing up the place in many other ways. And so we're getting a bigger bang for the buck if we saved those few $100s and spent it elsewhere. And the other thing too is like some of the things that people can actually pick up, you might want to spend a little bit more on those just because like I can touch this stool and I can tell it's real wood. I can touch this lamp, I can touch this metal bit. I like this cute mug that I staged the coffee area with. I can pick it up, it feels weighty, and then when I flip it over, oh, it says West Elm. Oh, fancy. Versus if it said IKEA, right? So like you pick and choose some of these things. Do you want to spend it on the mug or do you want to spend it on the dishcloth? And you would kind of rank them in the order of how much they're adding to the overall vibe of the house. The other side of like buying things that feel luxurious is just really avoiding things that look cheap. So something that looks really like light and plasticky. You know how some of the furniture, the laminated, is it MDF board furniture with the front piece that's wood look pasted on, right? Like if that starts to peel, that looks really cheap and really kills the vibe. So avoiding furnitures that could do that down the road, avoiding fabrics that are pilling, avoiding nasty towels, as I have mentioned. Like hand soaps. If you get the cheapest kind and it'll smell like a gas station bathroom, it might be worth spending just a few more dollars there. Not that you need like the fanciest $30 hand soap in every bathroom. It just needs to meet a certain minimum and not be wrong. It can be unremarkable as long as it's not drawing attention to it being cheap. And overall, I feel like it's usually a little bit more effective to splurge on one snazzy item that catches people's eye and leave the rest kind of unremarkable, not attention grabbing, than to have a bunch of mediocre pieces, none of which are memorable. You have to think about beyond just the upfront cost too when you're budgeting. Sometimes a cheap item is actually a costly thing in the long run. For example, bedding or towels that just wear really easily, that after 10 washes is trash. Then you just have have to keep replacing these things, right? And that cost would add up. And so while it might hurt a little to put more into the setup cost and buy something that might be more luxe, but buying something more premium or more well-made might be worth it in the long run, as long as, you know, the maintenance of that item isn't unreasonable. It's not like easily destructible by guests. It might be worth splurging on something that can last a while. And speaking of that, what can last a while? Here are a few materials that I have encountered and noticed what works and what doesn't. In terms of rugs, wool rugs are actually really easy to clean. You gotta make sure it's the kind of wool rug that doesn't lose a lot of fuzz at baseline. It's kind of hard to read just online. That might be something you have to go in store and feel. But for example, these two rugs that I'm showing you here that are from West Elm, they're both wool and they have never shed from day one. And if we spill something on it, it wipes off pretty easily. Now, granted, I don't know how everyone's guests are and if they will be cleaning up after themselves. But theoretically, if they spill something and wipe it off within a reasonable amount of time, wool is actually very easy to care for versus like a polyester rug. It would be harder to wipe off a stain, and also it would start curling in the corners, and that's like super annoying, and it also looks less premium. Leather is a no-go, whether there's kids or pets or even adults. When people have like sharp fingernails or they like even drag a pair of pants, for example, with like metal things. You know how jeans have those little metal button things and you drag that across those seats? That can leave a mark and it doesn't come out very easily. Velvet is actually surprisingly good. It's hard to scratch and cause permanent damage. I'm sure you can, but it's less likely than, say, leather. For other fabrics, especially for seating, there's sometimes a rub count listed on the website, and that can tell you how many thousands of times someone can rub it before it starts to pill. That's kind of hard to tell, and so it's really by word of mouth. For example, this article couch that I've already mentioned has worn really, really well versus this other couch from Blue Dot. I think my children are equally rough on this, but it's starting to pill a little more easily. So do your research and look at some reviews before you buy these things. This red chair has also really stood the test of time. This is actually like 8 years old at this point, so I'm really impressed with that. When you're looking for fabrics, try to look for something that has a pattern and has more of a texture instead of a smooth finish. That is a little easier to hide hairs. Not that you're trying to hide hairs and not clean, but you know what I mean. Like, it's less likely that your guest would detect a random stray eyelash that the lint roller failed to pick up. For bedding, white is actually fantastic because you can just bleach it and go nuts. Just make sure it's like a nice material that will withstand the bleach. Now moving on to number 7, which is the delivery and setting things up. Delivery can be a little tricky, especially if you're buying from a few different places. Each place has different shipping times, and with the supply chain disruptions, it's even harder to predict. So I would say if you're really in a time crunch, everything needs to arrive on a certain day, and you only have 1 week to set up, then you might lean more towards the Amazon side. Versus if you have some time or you have someone in the area that can receive all the furniture and then they can all be driven there or delivered from location A to your actual house, then you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of ordering from different places. I would really encourage you though, if you can, to get stuff from beyond just Amazon, just because of the variety that you can get access to. The design will come out a little more unique. It will appear a little bit more well thought out. For assembling furniture and setting up and hanging art and mounting the TV, we used TaskRabbit to help. You really just go on the app and punch in what you need done, and there would be a bunch of people available, and you can book whoever you see with good ratings and based on your schedule. Now, big caveat is not all markets have TaskRabbit. For the tiny house, we had to do everything ourselves because there is no TaskRabbit. But most major cities should have it, and it's been a tremendous help because we had so much to set up for the beach house. It's a 5-bedroom house. It still took us a full week with help. And then number 8 is stocking stuff. Supplies-wise, Costco and Amazon are really good places to shop, especially if you're wanting to buy in bulk. There's really not much to this point. The only thing I would point out is if you buy these giant bottles of shampoo, make sure that they will fit in the niche of the shower. We actually made the same mistake twice both for the tiny house and the beach house, we got like shampoo bottles that were just a little bit bigger than the niche would allow. So make sure you don't make that mistake. The other thing you need to figure out with stocking stuff is where the bulk items go. So say you go to Costco, you buy like 5 tons of TP. Obviously you don't want all of that in the cabinets because that probably won't be enough space and it would just feel really crowded. So you got to figure out where these items are stored, who's managing the inventory. Is it you or is it the cleaner? Maybe you have a pantry that can be locked or a closet somewhere that can store these things and your cleaner can maybe rotate them out. And as the bulk storage gets low, and then you purchase. Whichever method works best for you, but that's something for you to figure out with your cleaner. And then number 9, the final step is the final check. So with the final check, the first thing you're checking for is how does it look? And you're gonna walk through the space as a guest and as a photographer who is taking pictures for the listing and making sure you have the appropriate decorations. How does it look from whichever angle you are in the house? And as you're walking through, I want you to make sure you're walking through at different heights. This is especially true. I'm a short person, so like I have to imagine if I were taller, what would that look like? And also for looks, you want to sit in the chair and look around from there. Like in an actual usage scenario, sit in the bed and see what you see. Sit on the toilet and see what you see. That might give you a little bit more information in terms of, oh yeah, I'm sitting here and I actually don't like how this TV looks, or this mirror is going to bother me if I'm a person sitting in bed. So try to test that out as a person experiencing the room. One more thing about visual checks is like turn off the lights and try to test it out in the dark. Sometimes like art can look freaky at night, especially if it's a person's face, especially if you're hosting kids. I might just have some scaredy pants kids, but you don't want like your beautiful art to just look creepy at night and scare someone, right? The other thing about experiencing the room are the other parts of the 5 senses. So sight is just one thing. Smell more has to do with like making sure you have solid ventilation and that you have appropriate places for trash. This is more of a thing for a tiny house or a small space. Do you have a way for people to dispose of food? If they order takeout for dinner, are they going to smell that food the entire night? Sound-wise, really you're just making sure you didn't add some annoying sound. So for example, a clock that ticks too loud, or even like a smoke detector. Some of the more Wi-Fi connected ones light up when you walk by, and those are things you wouldn't notice until you test it out as a guest. For the sense of touch, you're obviously checking out the bedding, checking the towels, but also like if you have an outdoor patio, try like wearing shorts and sitting on the bench. Like, is this leaving annoying marks on your thighs? Like this is more of a thing for women, but this tends to happen to me and I would get really annoyed about someone's outdoor furniture because like they're very uncomfortable for someone wearing short shorts. How is the floor? Does it feel cold? Does it feel sticky? Does it feel like it's just not soft enough? Does it need a rug? And how's the heating and how's the AC? And then the last step of the final check is a functional check. So make sure you have TP, make sure you have like hand paper towels, offer a few cleaning supplies because usually if people are, especially if they're going to eat, if they have kids around, there's going to be food that's dropped on the floor and most people like to clean up after themselves somewhat, especially if they're staying in your house for a few days. Like they don't want to live in a messy house either. So give them that opportunity to kind of pick up after themselves, just basic dish soap supplies type stuff. And also like do the same thing, walk through the house. Like if you came in from the door, where would you hang coats? Where would your boots go? If you went to the bathroom, where would you throw trash? I've kind of alluded to that functional part from my whole rant about not having a hook for a towel when you come out of the shower. Those things matter and they contribute to guests' overall impression that this is a well thought out design, that the host/owner cares about the guest experience, and you're more likely to get a 5-star review if you can think through that design process and make sure you take care of all the details. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. Please leave me a comment, whatever other ideas you have design-wise. If you're considering hosting on Airbnb, please do use my link below. We both get a little bit of cash bonus and I would really, really appreciate that. Also, subscribe if you're interested in more Airbnb related content and I will talk to you next week.